Hey there, it's your co-host Sid.
And this is your co-host, Sharfuz. We know that job search is a difficult process. It can be frustrating, it's hard to network, find the right fit for yourself, and it can be a very lonely journey.
Here at Careers Uncorked, we're trying to bridge that journey and have amazing conversations with people.
And we want to welcome you to our episode today.
Hey Shirfuz, how are you feeling about today's session? I'm really excited. I think this is one of the topics that I'm super passionate about.
Yeah, Sid. I mean, as we said in that intro video that took a lot of effort to make, we're excited for another amazing conversation today. And we have Rachel, who we got the chance to meet a while back. And I remember my first conversation with her. She was super insightful. And I'm super excited to talk about her journey at Square and as at Tesla. And especially just in understanding how she interviews people and how recruitment works from her viewpoint.
For sure. I think also the tech industry is one of the hardest industries to sort of interview at and also break into because there's so much demand, especially for the bigger companies. So many candidates just apply every year. So I think it's really, really cool to get like an insider's perspective on this whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I'm super excited. So let's bring Rachel onto the stage and start knowing her with her questions.
Hi.
Hey, Rachel. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Great. It's going well. Thank you for being here with us today.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited.
For sure. Definitely. So we want to just kick it off with a quick introduction. Rachel, why don't you tell our audience about yourself a little bit, where you're based out of and what you're doing right now?
Yeah, of course. So I'm based out of SF. I basically have been working in the tech industry for the past 5 years. I also, have started my career in a tech giant conglomerate, and then worked in some Silicon Valley sexy tech companies as well. And just a quick note, I also graduated from a non-target school and have tried to job search and made my cross-country move. So I understand the struggles of job search as well. And I can't wait to share more tips here.
Wow, that is so awesome. Yeah, we're huge supporters of folks that go to non-target schools because both of us, Shafuz and I, went to a non-target school, and we realized most of our friends and people from our college weren't really able to sort of break into industries, especially because of that one thing. It's difficult to connect with people if they're not really hiring from the university. So I really want to sort of jump into that and dive more into it. But before we get started, Shafuz, I know you have some high-level questions about where Rachel went to college. You want to get us started with that?
Yeah, Rachel, I think one question I really love asking people who are out of college now is when you look back at it, what do you think were some of the most significant experiences that had an impact for you, for your career?
Yeah, so I hope this is going to be relevant really soon, but I did a study abroad program that allowed me to go to 3 different countries. So we went to Russia, India, and China. And not only did we study there, we also went to interview a lot of businesses through our alum network. So that really opened my eyes when it comes to the economic differences, cultural differences in the different cities outside of the US. And I also did it in my senior year. So I had to do job search in the US at the same time when I was traveling in 3 different countries. So that was a crazy semester.
Oh God.
Yeah,
that senior year is tough by itself, and traveling abroad and interviewing and all these things, that sounds absolutely insane.
Yeah, I actually thought about flying back to the US for 1 weekend just to catch an interview with I believe EMC for the final round.
Yeah.
And my dad was like, "You're crazy."
That does sound crazy.
Yeah.
That's funny. But wow, that's definitely quite an adventurous time you had in college. Definitely you got a lot of diverse experiences. And I guess when you graduated from college, right, what was your mindset about what kind of career trajectory you wanted? Since you have had such rich experiences so far, what was your approach at that time?
Really good question. So I actually am a very organized person. I'm a huge planner. So I remember starting my first job and I had I sat down and then I built a 5-year trajectory model in my Excel.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, I'm gonna, get promoted this time. I'm going to change job at this time, get my MBA done, and then move and, all that stuff. But I would say about half of it came true. And obviously the other half didn't. And I also had the mindset, like during my first job, like in order to land my first job, I had a mindset where I couldn't justify myself going to sleep without like applying to at least 15 jobs a day.
Mhm.
So it was a very hectic time during my senior year. But yeah, that's kind of a crazy mindset that I used to have.
Wow, that's so funny. So you mentioned the 5-year trajectory. Shafuz and I were just chatting last week about this. We were like, a couple of my friends actually work at Salesforce and some other firms, and they actually have them like new joiners. They have them prepare this for presentations to introduce themselves. They're like, oh, this is like the school you went to, like where you want to be in 5 years. So that's absolutely crazy that you mentioned it. And I think it's so important to goal set. Even if you don't follow each step along the way, but it's really important to actually have an idea of around where do you want to go, right? And then I think that initial research definitely has probably helped you a lot in sort of planning a career and knowing exactly what you want to do.
Yeah. I could just imagine recruiters asking you, oh, what do you want to do in 5 years? And you'd be like, oh, do you have an hour? You know?
Let me pull up this Excel sheet real quick.
Let me open my Excel first. That's super funny, but yeah, that's really awesome. So starting off with, you had some amazing roles at IBM and at Tesla, some OG companies that especially students and everyone is like always super excited about. So very briefly, would love to hear a little bit about your experiences there, maybe talk a little bit about the culture, how you felt working there, starting off with IBM and then also about Tesla.
Of course. So I started off my career at IBM as a consultant, and I did that for about 2 years. So I really, really, really appreciated that role, because as a consultant, you're kind of immediately thrown to, be client facing. You like question like if you're wearing enough or wearing like the right attire when you're going on the client sites. There are a lot of these small experiences that like you would never experience getting, like, like traveling to a client site without really having enough instructions how to get there. So from like a more professional end, I would say that my experience at IBM was very positive. It allowed me to have a lot of experiences, also to network with a lot of people as well. And when I say networking, obviously it's such a jargon, a lot of people use it, but I think what I really enjoy is to talk to people from like different perspective. For example, I ended up, right now I am basically in a project/program management role. So I'm pretty much in this function, but I remember speaking to someone at IBM, which was a 20-year experienced project manager. And he told me that if you want to pursue a project management route, it's not a very popular route to go in tech. So it's going to be hard to be successful. So just talking to people with like different perspectives, right? Like that led me to think about whether or not that's the route I want to choose, and also why I want to choose that route as well. So that was my role at IBM. And at Tesla, Tesla is a super fast-paced company, as y'all couldn't imagine. I remember there were a lot of processes that wasn't really there, so like it was a really good role for me to bring my experience from IBM, the structure, the hierarchy that we had, and give it back at Tesla as well. So both experience definitely helped me to be a more well-rounded project manager.
Wow. That's really cool. Definitely, like you just seems like you built upon from one experience to another, and that definitely kept on growing. I think frequently asked question to whoever worked at Tesla: did you get a chance to meet Elon Musk? If so, was it?
Well, I think we had a few all hands where I saw him through a screen, but I've never met him in person. But funny story though, one time he was almost, I think, going into our office, because he's usually not at our office. The manager sent an email to everyone on her team saying potential Elon presence, so be on your A game. Yeah.
Wow, that's so funny. Like everyone scramble, like Elon's in the office.
For sure.
That's crazy. Wow. Definitely seems like his presence would get everyone riled up any day. Yeah. And then now coming back to it, right? At Square, we believe you're working in partnerships. That's a very exciting role. So would love to hear about what does your work look like, and what do you do on a day-to-day basis, and what do you try to achieve to the partnership side of things?
Yeah, so when I actually landed my role at Square, one of the things that attracted me was because it was a brand new role, brand new function on the team. So there wasn't someone here before that I'm backfilling.
Mhm.
So in other words, partnership, like on our team, we have a lot of business development folks, and we also have like a lot of partner managers. But my role is actually to help with the partner onboarding process, to help like our partners after they sign with Square to onboard to the Square ecosystem.
Mhm.
So it was a brand new role, and it was very also like process oriented as well, which is, speaks to my expertise. So I really enjoyed the flexibility of like defining what my scope is like. So when I first started, I had a lot of like kind of informational interviews inside at Square to understand what the pain point is. I remember having like a spreadsheet of backlog of like pain items that I had to tackle by when, like what the priority is. So a lot of these things kind of stems from like the consulting, like requirements gathering phase as well. So going back to the IBM experience, it was really valuable. But on a day-to-day basis at Square, I think because my role is brand new, and a lot of people, there are people that buy into the function, there are people that don't buy into the function. So I kind of treat myself like a product manager to constantly have to advocate for my role, my resources, think about like from a value add perspective, like what are you bringing to the team that other people are not seeing, like communicating it in the right way. Like I run a lot of like forecasts or headcount analysis as well. So there is a lot of, advocating for your own role that happens on a day-to-day basis. So in addition to the meetings, it's a lot of like thinking about strategy and presenting your work.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's really awesome. It sounds like you have the creative freedom, since this is the first time they've had this role, that you really had the creative freedom to define what your responsibilities are.
Yeah.
Which is really cool.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I guess that makes me wonder. So in that basis, would it be a lot of external facing, like you're trying to build more partnerships with other companies in the ecosystem? So do you just interact with a lot of external companies, like pitch new ideas of partnerships to them?
Yeah, so the external facing piece is mostly managed by business development team. So they're the ones that's responsible for signing new partners. And my role, I mean, there is an element where it's also a little external as well. And again, that was actually like a huge carrot that I had when I was interviewing with Square, because my hiring manager said, if you wanted to be external facing, you could be, because you're helping the partners on board, so you can be external facing, like, driving these initiatives with them.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, I definitely sort of always considered partnership to be another appealing thing, and and definitely listening to you definitely makes it sound really, really exciting.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So I want to jump into one of our main segments for today, which is recruitment. So Rachel, you've mentioned a couple of things. You came from a non-target school. You worked in consulting, which is crazy, crazy hard industry to break into, especially if you come from a non-target school. You've worked at Tesla, which is a dream company for many. And then now you're working at Square, which I'm a huge fan of that company. I also like Twitter, but I like the CEO quite a bit. So it's crazy. So I want to jump into some questions to like help other folks understand what was sort of that journey you went through, and also like how can they use a lot of your knowledge that you've gained through going through this process to sort of better themselves in this whole process. So to get started, how can a student with little to no experience position themselves for a job after graduation? And this may be like they haven't had previous internships or something like that.
Of course, yeah. I think that, so I went to a small liberal arts school that's focused on just business management for all the undergrads. So I would say that internship was obviously a huge carrot to your success when it comes to crafting your resume. However, it also, I think that one thing that students can do is to think about what are the school relevant experience or projects that you've done that potentially can turn into a work experience that you can talk about. For example, I have done a semester class as an external consulting kind of project that we did with a manufacturing firm in Switzerland. So I wrote that into my resume as a project that as a work experience that I did for 6 months because it was a long project. And I think that it really helped, just think about like what you can, like what is one of the coursework that you did that is similar to a work experience that someone would value.
Gotcha. I think that's very well said. So especially like the extracurriculars that you do and anything else that you do, even if it's not a very formal experience, I think it can be converted to a valuable experience for the company that you're applying to.
Yeah, or like a student leadership role.
Yeah.
I know that my hiring manager also values people like head of your like student organization or like business fraternity, things like that.
Yeah. That's very true. When you said fraternity, I saw Shafuz's face real quick. He was really big on like the fraternity culture at a university.
Yeah. I was never, and I didn't take the leadership type there, but it was fun.
Yeah. Good time.
Good.
Yeah, for sure. So just to make sure, you went to Babson College, right?
Yes, correct.
It's a dream university for quite a few of us.
Fun fact, I was literally hanging out with a friend from Babson College last night. He's a current senior there. He, do you know about the organization Tower for entrepreneurs in Babson? So he was the president of the tower of that.
I'm so happy that it still exists. It's awesome.
Yes, so I was like telling him about this about our session today. So like massive respect to Babson. I spent some time on the campus there, so really cool place.
Yeah, probably partying.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
All right. So my next question is actually about going to a non-target school. So what was sort of the best process that you found that you could use for applying for jobs and actually stand out as a candidate? Because there aren't people coming to your university to recruit the firms that are sort of top of the line. So how do you sort of connect with these people, or how do you like apply to these positions?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I had my first job out of college was at IBM, and IBM did not come to my campus to recruit. So the way I found this job was actually through, I think just like online. So I applied, and then I would strongly recommend applying through a referral if you have a referral. It can be something that's kind of tricky to ask as a college student, especially that could be a tricky question, but you'll be surprised at how many people are actually willing to provide the referrals. I, as an alum, also provide a lot of referrals to students, or also just like networks that I met on LinkedIn. In addition to that, I would say if you don't have a referral, then make sure that if you are selected for an interview, connect with alums that work at that company at the moment, even if they're not in the same department or the same role that you're applying for. So that's kind of what I did when I was preparing for my interview at IBM. And I ended up connecting with her just to learn about like what the company culture is, what the processes are, and what her experience is like so far. And the last advice that I would give is also actually to mention about your referral during the interview, just to echo the reference that your interview could potentially make when they're thinking about like you as a candidate.
I think that's some great advice. I think what you mentioned there, especially with connecting with alumni, and I think this is something that a lot of people miss out on, is even if you don't know them, you have something in common. You both spent like a significant amount of time in college. So that's a great starting point. So I would highly recommend everyone to just go on LinkedIn and start connecting with alumni, just start a conversation. It's a great way to expand your network overall. And I think a great topic we touched upon was referrals. So like, I think the word's pretty much out there. Everyone knows that referrals are a huge deal, but tell us from a perspective of actually working at a firm, how are these referrals actually considered? Like, how important do they play a role in, like, what exactly is the process of someone who comes in with a referral and someone who comes in without?
Yeah, so I would say referrals add a lot more like context to your application when you are, imagine you're a recruiter screening like 150 resumes for one role overnight. I've actually connected with some like recruiters at Square where they would have to close down or take down the application after like 48 hours because there were just way too many applications.
Wow.
So imagine like a referral is kind of like a filter that they can apply when they're looking at the resume. So we're not really saying like the ones that didn't apply through a referral will not be looked at, but it's almost like sorted through, one's referral first and then looking into the ones without. And then when it comes to referral, I think it's really important that you are making a connection with the person that's giving you a referral as well, in addition to just, even if you don't know him or her in person, even if it's a connection that you made on LinkedIn, make sure that you try to understand like why they should refer you. One thing that I really recommend when I'm like about to give someone a referral is to write something about yourself that the referral can like add in the referral. So for example, at Square or at Tesla, when I provide referrals, usually there's a blurb that would have a free text form that the referrer can write about the person that you're trying to refer. So you can save that person some time when you're the one that is tailoring that message, and send it to your referrer. I think that would really help a lot when it comes to like tailor making what your application can be like.
It's very true. That's for sure. I remember back when I was working at Accenture, we sort of had this process where you would write about the person. So you sort of describe the person and how you've worked with them previously.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really cool because then you can actually talk about your personal experience working with them as opposed to just being like, here's a person's name and go refer them. And there's this one other thing that I always did to make sure that friends and people I'd actually worked with would actually end up getting at least an interview. I would reach out to the recruiter themselves. Because I was working at the same company, so I'd be able to get their contact and send them an email being like, oh, I had this great candidate. Would you be able to consider him for this role, him or her? So that's really nice that you sort of walked us through that whole process, because I think it's pretty obvious that referrals work, but no one really knows the back end of how exactly it impacts the application.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think, and I have like a quick note there. I think so recently, I got the chance to talk to a lot of students, and one of the things they said, like I asked them what were some of their biggest challenges with applying to jobs, and a big thing that came out is like just like networking and asking people for like help, right? So one pattern that I've seen, like students who are more on the younger side, like I guess junior year or something, they are shy, as well as they find it like very transactional to reach out to people to ask for help, and they're not sure like how to approach it. So either people are shy to reach out to out on LinkedIn for some sort of a help, or other people other group feel that it's like, oh, doesn't sound good, I'm just going to be reaching out to a person hoping they were going to help me out. It seems a little transactional. What are your thoughts on that? Because I've definitely seen that to be a pattern.
Yeah, I mean, I have been reached out to a lot of students, and I definitely have seen some of the messages that are a lot more plain, that says like hi, or even like no message, right? So we'll just be connecting with you, or some of the messages I've received is, hi, like I see that you work at Square, like nice to connect with you on LinkedIn. I found this job that I would be interested in. Can you send me a referral? So I would say that is a very direct way of making it as transactional as you would think, right? Yeah. But when it comes to networking, I strongly recommend even starting off with some questions about the person that you may have. Like it could be about their experience. It could be about the company you're interested in. It doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be conducted via a call. It could be just, direct LinkedIn messaging. So that's the first step of making a connection with someone. And then after that, you can see potentially like, hey, I am actually in the job search process as well. Would love to see if you could offer me a referral. Most of the time, I would say people would say yes, unless they really don't know you. But once you've established that connection, it is so much easier.
For sure, definitely, totally agree with you. That's and I hope more students start doing that, and not see it as transactional, but just hear about, just connect with people and hear about people's experiences. That's such an eye opener at the end of the day.
I think one more thing I would add is you would think that the networking world is actually so small. Like for example, we connect, like Sid and I connected, Shop and I connected earlier before we even, they found me for this podcast as well. Yeah. So you don't think that when you're connecting with someone that you're never going to speak to them again, because I've definitely found scenarios where I try to connect with someone. Let's say they work at Uber when I was job searching, and now they are trying to work at Square, so they're connecting with me. So what comes around comes around.
Very true.
Absolutely.
Very, very true.
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah.
So my next question is actually more particular to a resume, and this is something I personally also go through like every year almost. I sort of look at my resume and I'm like, wow, this needs to change. So how do you sort of look at a resume when a candidate applies, and how do you sort of get a good perspective of them? So what is it that you look for in a resume that really highlights an ideal candidate for a role?
I think first rule of thumb is that you shouldn't have the mindset to think that your resume is like a one size fits all, because they really are not. I've had to tailor make my resumes where I even changed my title a few times, and to make it more descriptive. I actually really appreciate when I look at resumes that I know has been worked on to completely tailor making it to fit every single job description item. So how I like to think about it when I craft my resume is I look at the description of the job I'm applying to, and I think to myself, have I done this before? And how have I done it before? And then while I am answering myself, I write out a bullet to describe exactly what that item is. So that's kind of what people will say when they said you should tailor make your resume to fit the specific role. It does take more time and more tedious, but I think it's way more, it pays off a lot more when it comes to applying for jobs.
Very true. I mean, a lot of people sort of take it as a numbers game and just throw out applications and their resumes to like 200 job applications with the same resume. And I think that oftentimes sort of leads to a downhill battle where it's like your resume might be great, but it's not really a good fit for this role. So that's very well said. And I think just to add to that, there's one thing that I tried out was as I was going through experiences, I would start documenting them in like my Apple Notes. Just because like there's these small things that you do that are very valuable, but you don't really see the value for them at that given moment. But years down the line, that might be like, oh, wow, this was actually a really, really cool thing that I worked on. And now you actually have written details off it, as opposed to thinking back like, oh, I actually did something around that, but I wasn't really sure about the details.
And then I think one last thing I would add is also to stop thinking about like what we did or what you and your team did, but start thinking about what you personally contributed. And I am a victim of this as well. I always think about what the team contributed. But when I was, in a couple of panel interviews, interviewing candidates, I oftentimes have to ask them like, okay, so you told me about this experience, but what was your role in this project? Like, what did you do?
Very true.
Absolutely. I think also like just the quantification aspects that we keep hearing about a lot, just quantifying your work as much as you can. That's definitely like the way to go. For sure. I think, and that kind of makes me wonder, Rachel, as you're you're interviewing people, right? What are some of the most the reasons that why people get rejected from your experiences?
Yeah, so I didn't find out about this until really, recently when I've been inside, the company interviewing for candidates. I would say there are honestly so many reasons why people get rejected. It could be that you're applying at a time that is too late for the application. So like I mentioned, sometimes the job posting gets pushed down after 2 days. And you could be like, oh, I'm still working on this resume. And then by the time you apply, you automatically get rejected because you just no longer are accepting candidates. Or it could be because, oh, we really are looking for someone with 5 years of experience instead of 2 to 3 years. There are some, like hiring managers have definitely put priorities or weight differently when it comes to the criteria that they're looking for, that is oftentimes not made specific to the candidates, because they want to get a variety of resumes, but they may be really measuring like, I really want someone that worked in a startup before, I really want someone that had, at least 2 years of experience. So, other things that I've seen is also like location really matters. Like even though the job posting would say we're looking for someone in the San Francisco Bay Area and remote, but they really are looking for someone in San Francisco, not really in any other cities. So it's not really about your qualification or like your resume. It's sometimes about factors that you may never consider about.
Absolutely. No, definitely, that definitely makes sense. And a quick follow-up, because you mentioned that about the years of experience. So sometimes, you're applying and and it's like, okay, 2 to 4 or 4 to 5 years of experience, and you may have done all the things, but you don't have that years of experience. So do you suggest people to always, what is the range that is still okay to apply for if there's a discrepancy in the years of experience? So say 1 year, I only have 1 year experience, but the role requires 4 to 5 or 3 to 4, right? Should I still go for that role? And is it reasonable to still try for those roles?
I think a general rule of thumb is when you see resumes that says 2 to 3 years of experience, like plus or minus 1 year is usually okay. But when it comes to like 5 years of experience or more, but you're only like 2 years out of college, that gets a little bit tricky. It's a stretch. And obviously, like I've definitely applied to jobs that are like that before as well. And sometimes I hear back, sometimes I don't. But yeah.
No, I think that's great information. I've also noticed a lot of discrepancies in job descriptions with like crazy positions, like new grad positions, but they require experience of 2 years. It's like, how are those two things aligned? So that's really funny.
I think every job posting, when they get posted, like hiring managers put a lot of work into writing the description to really make it sound like it's someone that they're looking for. And the thought process that goes into every single bullet it's not really a copy and paste, even though as a candidate you would think that it's probably similar to another role they hired before, but it's really not. So I would say as much time as a hiring manager has put into crafting that description, you should put as much time as tailor making your resume to fit to that.
Very true. I think you highlighted like one of the most, I would say this is the most important takeaway, because everyone is like, how do you tailor your resume to the job? It's literally everything is in the job description. That is what they're looking for.
Just
so
use the words, like exactly use the words. That's on I guess on the bullet points as well.
Yeah, like talk about your experiences around that and stuff like that. It's so funny. So super short story. When I was interning at Deloitte, towards the end of my internship, my managers were really happy with my work, but they were like, we don't think the job description actually meets what the role entails. So we want you to give it a shot and like give us like your best job description. So they had me work on the job description for the role. I of course I like customized it more because it was like we were using SharePoint and we were using some other tools and techniques. So I made sure to mention those skills, but it was like an insider view in terms of how those things are built out. So I'm sure you work with that a lot.
Yeah, that's actually the first step of being a manager, like to be able to write a job description for someone that you're trying to hire. Because oftentimes you're trying to hire someone that has most likely done things that you've done before and you're trying to offload. So yeah, that's a great first step.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So the next question is, and Rachel, I know like being in Silicon Valley, being around the tech industry, we all sort of deal with a lot of rejections. What is the best way to deal with rejections, and how have you previously dealt with rejections and like kept motivated to keep going?
This is a heavy one. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I have I think I've applied to jobs a handful of times now in my career, and every time I go through a job search journey, I give myself at least 3 months to really get into the meat of the interviewing process, because it takes some time to apply and then go through interviews and potentially fail some of the first interviews, and then go into the real meat of the journey. So I would say giving yourself some time to really digest and then get deep into the process. And also get into the mindset of like advocating yourself, because when you're in an interview, you're like basically trying to sell yourself, right? And it does take some time to think about, what do you want to talk about? What is your intro line going to be? How do you introduce yourself? why do you want to work at this company? And then I previously have obviously like broken down before. I remember like applying for one of the jobs and applying for jobs and then getting countless rejections. And one night I just broke. Like I just couldn't deal with it anymore. And it was really tough. But at the same time, I think that one of the things that really changed my mindset is to tell myself that rejection is not a one-way street. When the company is rejecting you, it could mean so many things that we talked about, like location, use of experience, or like applying at the wrong timing, right? So think that when they're rejecting you, they're actually sparing you time to not have to go through like a couple years of working there and potentially not liking it and go through this journey again, right? So you should ask your interviewer when they're rejecting you, because they are actually sparing you time. And then turning that into an experience that you can learn from. Like what I always do is to actually email the interviewers if you can, once you get rejected, and ask them like, hey, I just wanted to know like, what could I have done better in the interview? And you're not really asking them face to face. You're just asking them via email. And some interviewers actually do respond to you and say, oh, we're really looking for someone that's more analytical, or we're looking for someone that has like more skills into this area, right? And then learn from that experience. So then it's like, oh, there are other factors that I couldn't have foreseen.
Yeah,
for sure.
That's a very different lens to look at things, but I think that's amazing. I think a lot of people are sort of looking for that feedback process that's missing in the whole interview stages and everything like that. And the fact that you mentioned that you can actually reach out to your interviewer and sort of just ask them over email. Sometimes they'll respond, sometimes they won't, but I think that's a great way of getting feedback.
Yeah, and I would say like that process of reaching back out to your interviewer is also a form of networking as well. Because you're like plugging your name in front of their mailbox, and then when they need someone to fill another role, they would think, oh, maybe you can like fill this role too.
Yeah, very true. All right, so we're getting to about our last segment, which is the rapid fire, but I quickly wanted to ask some questions that we did get in before the session. So this is sort of like a quick Q&A. And I know we didn't get too much time to cover the interviewing part, the actual like being part of the interview. So one of those questions is revolving around that. So how can a student really make the most out of an interview, being at their first job out of college? Like what is a good interview in your terms?
So I think interviewing right now, especially, is difficult because you're doing it virtually. So making a first impression virtually is going to be difficult. And the full disclosure, I've had some interviewees where they were overly passionate, and it comes through like from the video conferencing. And I've also interviewed people where they were a little bit on the shyer end, not as enthusiastic about the job, about the company. So I would say making a good first impression is really important, especially doing it through VC. Very
true. I think that's very well said. My next question was actually from one of our viewers who's been tuning into quite a few of these sessions. So really cool to see the engagement. So it's in terms of like over the pandemic, what are some skills or what are some technical skills that people should be looking for during this time while they're sort of have more free time and are sitting at home?
Wow, that's especially in the tech industry, I think there is a variety of technical skills. So it really depends on your role. If you're a designer, like there are definitely design skills that I probably wouldn't be able to speak to. Or if you're a software engineer, like there is engineering skills. But yeah, I think like general rule of thumb, I would say that like learning SQL, learning how to code is pretty basic for a lot of the tech, like people that work in tech.
Yeah. And I think in particular, any certifications that you would recommend for folks to get, because I know like after graduation from college, I think these certifications are sort of the next level while you're working and sort of trying to work up the firm. Certifications are quite a big deal. So what are your thoughts on that?
So I'm like, my job function is in the program/project management route. So I personally have an agile certified agile Scrum Master role certification. I find that really useful. just to learn the methodology. And then there's also like project management, PMP certification as well. That is useful. Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. I love when you name these certifications because I worked in consulting, so I can totally relate to what you're talking about. All right. So with that being said, I think it's time to jump into our last segment, which is the rapid fire. Super excited for this. So this is going to be, I don't think you've ever read these questions before. So
I think she did.
You did? No, you're not supposed to. It's undisclosed. Let's assume you haven't.
Let's assume he hasn't, yeah.
I don't think I've read them before.
Stops it.
All right, so I'll get us started. What is something that not many people know about you?
I guess like I'm originally from Hong Kong, so that is like my pastime. I actually grew up there, so not a lot of people know. I don't also like talk about it much either.
Wow, that's really awesome.
I
always wanted to visit Hong Kong, so that's
great city.
Somewhere left as well, yeah. And Rachel, I know you traveled a lot. So, what's another place on your bucket to travel to that you're like gonna go the first place you get the chance?
I actually haven't traveled to a lot of cities in Europe, so I actually really want to go to Paris after watching Emily in Paris.
Oh my god, I've seen that show. It's such a good show.
I know, but yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. All right. What show are you watching right now?
I just watched. It's a movie, but I just watched the Chicago 7 last night, and it's a great movie. It's a bit heavy, but
okay. So thanks for the recommendations. I was looking for something. That's great. Okay. If you could have any superpower, what would it be?
Oh wow. I actually would want to go into anyone's like mind to hear about what they're talking to themselves or how they're hearing things and how they're interpreting things. I find that really fascinating.
Okay, that's pretty cool. So like just mind reading to some extent.
Yeah.
That's awesome. All right, Sid.
All right, what is your hidden talent?
My hidden talent. Oh God, let me think. I think my hidden talent is, I don't know, I'm like quite an empathetic person, so I feel a lot of like what other people are feeling, and a lot of people just like treat me as like a storyteller.
Okay, I could see that. Okay, the next one. If you could eat one food for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Ramen.
Okay. I hear you.
That's really cool. I really like ramen too. So
yeah, the same.
Favorite co-host, Sid or Shafuz?
Oh God, no.
We have a whole point system going on here.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. Okay, fine. I would have to go with Sid because he invited me first.
Okay. Oh. Hey Rachel, it was like we just rotate this. Okay, last one I invited, so this session was on his. So that's like, damn, why did that have to make the difference?
Don't worry, Rachel. It always happens. So whenever Shafuz invites a guest, they actually end up voting for me because they're like, oh, we don't know this person, so let's vote for him because Shafuz won't feel as bad. And then whenever I invite people, they're like, oh, we know Sid, so of course it's Sid.
So from now on, I'm in charge of inviting all the guests. Okay, it's all my responsibility.
Yeah.
But yeah. This has been great, Rachel. Thank you so much. That's like, you're such a great sport, and this was really, really fun. And I guess we are a little beyond our time, which shows what a fun conversation this has been. Sure. But I guess to wrap up, Rachel, what would be your final couple of recommendations you would want to leave us with, like your greatest words of wisdom?
Oh, I think on the topic of interviewing and recruiting for the audience here. Just don't think this as a one-time process, and also treat this as a journey that you'll learn from. So all the applications, all the cover letters that you spend, working on, and the interviewing as well, like it's a process that you also will learn from. So it's not just a, like some time that you'll lose.
Right.
Very, very true.
For sure. That's definitely valuable.
All right. So wrapping up, thanks so much, Rachel. This has been extremely valuable. I have to say this has been one of the most fun sessions that we've had.
Fun. This was awesome.
That's really, really awesome. So thanks so much for being here. For people tuning in, you can go follow Rachel on LinkedIn. She's really cool. A great way to get her on a podcast. Just follow her, start a conversation, and she'll be on your podcast. Just like how I did. But yeah, thanks so much, Rachel, for being here. This is like amazing. I think there have been so many questions around the whole recruitment process, and you just shedding some light on it is so valuable for people.
Thank you so much for having me. It's definitely my honor, and I love doing things like that to give back to the community. And I'm more than happy to help anyone too.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, man.
And have a great rest of your weekend.
Have a good rest of your weekend. See you later. Bye, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Hey, you. Yeah, you. We want you to join our community.
You do?
Join us by hitting that subscribe button to stay up to date with all the awesome content we have in store for you.
Oh yeah, and one more thing. Make sure to smash that like button. No way, actually, destroy it. We're millennials. We love seeing likes. Catch you next time. Whoop-ow!